everyone. So I posted a video on Instagram yesterday, and it was a bit of a flow movement where I'm moving from one position to the other to try to recapture some motion at the pelvis and the hips. A lot of times when we think about mobility, hip mobility drills, I think they get kind of lost in translation because we don't get a lot of motion at the pelvis and we're going after a lot of open chain type movements. So I might be in like a bear position and trying to create this kind of open chain motion, using stretching, things like that to change the position of the actual hip joint. But I like to think about how the pelvis actually moves, how these iliac bones move to allow for even more access to that range. So the position that I posted on Instagram yesterday was designed to help drive both external rotation of the pelvic bone and internal rotation of the pelvic bone, while also working on the orientation of the pelvis. So certain positions, like pulling my foot up the wall, is going to drive more external rotation. But on that opposite side, when I go into sort of a rock back position, it's driving more external rotation, but also an orientation of that side of the pelvis posteriorly. When I come up onto an all fours position, that's going to bias a little bit more of that kind of neutral pelvis where I'm opening up the back side of the pelvis, and it's going to drive more internal rotation. Now, if I take that further and I drop this right hip down over the left, I'm now creating more opening on the back side of the pelvis on the left. I'm teaching my pelvis to rotate over that opposite femur, and now I'm creating external rotation on this side. So by going through both motions, we can recapture a lot of overall hip mobility, and we can do so in a way where we're using the breath to help us also create stability. Because if I just give you mobility without the control behind it, then likely you're not going to own that range and continue to have those movement options available to you. So let's go through it together. I hope that was helpful explanation. So I'm going to go ahead and set up. So I'm in this rock back position on this leg, and I've got my foot on the wall behind me. So you might have to kind of scoot and get yourself in a good position where you can do both of those. So when I'm in this position, I'm going to drop down to my elbows. I'm going to actively, so I'm creating that stability, pull my heel up the wall like it's super glued to the wall, which is going to help pull my pelvis underneath me. In that position, I'm going to take an inhale. So there's lots of expansion pushing into my back, especially on that left side. And then as I exhale, I'm going to let that foot come off the wall, come up to this bear position. I don't want to be overly tucked here. I want to be nice and long. I like to think of my sternal headlight, my manubrium, shining a light on that wall in front of me throughout. So when I'm in this position, I'm going to purposely drop that right hip down. So I'm getting a stretch in the back of the left hip, but I'm not dumping the hip out to the side. So there's still some stability here as I drop that right hip down and find that nice deep length in the back of the hip and the back of the pelvis. So I'm going to hold this position, take an inhale. And if you let yourself, you can try to relax the pelvic floor, which is going to push pressure back into the posterior pelvic floor. So when I inhale here, I'm also getting chest wall expansion, probably a little bit of posterior expansion of the thorax. And then I'm going to go back as I exhale into that good rock back position that's active, pulling up with the heel. So let me take you through it for 5 breaths. Hold this position, inhale, keep this hip square with the floor. Exhale, drop that hip, keep the sternal headlight up. Inhale, exhale, drop it back, drag the heel up the wall, hold this position, push away from the floor, inhale, exhale, Inhale, drop that hip. Sternum up. Exhale. Drag that heel, inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. And I would repeat that for about, so that might have been 10 breaths or 5 reps. I would repeat that on both sides for 5 breaths each side. You could do 2 or 3 sets with breaths in between, and then recheck your mobility. Go back to that 90-90 position. See if it's a little easier to sit upright in this position and you don't feel like you're falling all over the place. So I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for everybody for being on my email list and supporting my business. It means the world to me. And I truly, truly hope that these videos are valuable to you.